This week on LTC News, a new LatinX organization.
And the mission is to empower the Latino community. We want to unite everybody.
Bike share comes to Lowell.
We're going to start in Lowell with 180 bikes.
And Senator Markey battles the FCC.
The FCC should work for communities, not powerful cable companies.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. This is my last appearance on LTC News before I step in as the co-host of Mass Appeal on WWLP, an NBC station in Springfield. I've enjoyed bringing you all the stories over the past 2 years. Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey is leading the battle in Washington to preserve local media and free speech. At issue is the survival of public access television across the country and right here at LTC in Lowell. The Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, is a 5-person panel led by President Trump's appointee, Ajit Pai. The FCC is proposing rule changes to alter legislation that has been in place since Congress passed the Cable Act of 1984. On April 1st, Senator Markey convened a meeting of 60 Access Center leaders and held a press conference to clarify what is at stake and why.
Today, community television faces an existential threat. The Federal Communications Commission has proposed a rule change that would allow cable companies to shirk their obligation to the communities where they operate. Under current law, towns and cities across the country and the Commonwealth are permitted to require, as part of the cable franchise agreements, the cable operators meet demonstrated community needs by setting aside channels for PEG stations. Yet, the FCC's current proposal would allow cable operators to assign a value to these channels and then subtract that amount and the value the operator places on any other in-kind contributions from the franchise fees the cable operator owes. What's in jeopardy for Massachusetts PEG stations? Potentially tens of millions of dollars in funding that otherwise would be used in the community. And as a result of these proposed changes at the Federal Communications Commission, local governments in Massachusetts and across the country would be forced to decide between supporting local PEG channels and supporting other critical institutions serving the public good, like schools and public safety buildings. That's a Sophie's choice.
According to the senator, the big cable companies are petitioning the FCC for these changes solely to increase their already massive profits. Consumers would not see their cable bills go down, and towns would lose their important municipal meeting coverage and coverage of community issues and events. They would lose their nonpartisan election programming, member-produced shows, and much more. The senator pointed out that the FCC is overstepping its mandate by attempting to substantially change legislation, which is rightfully the purview of Congress. The public service requirements from the 1984 Cable Act include franchise fees and free public channels in return for the company's use of public rights-of-way for laying their cables. Now the companies use their cables for phone and internet services too, but don't pay extra despite increases in profits.
This access is worth fighting for. It's worth protecting. And that's why I have led a letter to the Federal Communications Commission with 10 of my senatorial colleagues. And I've personally spoken to the FCC, urging it to cease any rulemaking that would damage PEG channels. The FCC should work for communities, not powerful cable companies. That is what they are sworn to do. This is where the fight begins, and we're going to spread this across the whole country, because at jeopardy is nothing less than democracy.
PEG stands for Public Education and Government Channels. Here in Lowell, our public channels are $8.95, the city's education channel is $22, and the government channel is $99, where all the city meetings can be found. These channels could be gone with a stroke of the FCC's pen. We will keep you informed as things progress. There's a new organization in town that helps immigrants adapt to life in Lowell. The LatinX Community Center of Lowell is run by two dedicated community members, Luz Vasudevan and Diego Leonardo, from an office on Kirk Street downtown. Latinx is the new term for both male and female people of Latin American descent.
The mission is to empower the Latino community. We want to unite everybody, unite all the Latino community. We have people from Colombia, from Guatemala, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico. We also want to integrate the community from Brazil. Even though they don't speak Spanish, they are Latinos. It's very, very difficult because everybody's on their own, but we are trying to get everybody, like we are trying to get leaders from each country, so see if we can bring everybody together.
I actually grew up in Guatemala, and then when I came here, I was like burst out of my bubble. I was living into the typical middle class life where you see in TV. And then I started to become more aware of what was my community and how we were treated and the different stereotypes that we were given to be as Latino. And thinking of that, then we see that there were so many resources that we couldn't utilize because at the beginning we didn't have the language skills that we needed to get that proficiency. We seen that there were so many opportunities wasted because nobody applied or they didn't know about it. We realized that we needed to have a network that we can find a way that we feel comfortable getting those services with someone that can speak the language that you do or maybe can relate with the story that you have.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Nike y es Verónica.
We are going to be doing English classes here, and I have been approached by some members of the community that they would like to learn Spanish. So we are going to have Spanish classes here too. And I recently joined an organization to learn about finances. So we are going to do financial education here too, because I think it's a big need for the Latino community. Advocacy, like with the school system, I help them to go to the resource center and put the kids into the school system. Sometimes it's very delayed and the parents don't know how to approach the system, so I go with them, and I know a few people there at the school department, so we are able to help the parents that come to Lowell and don't have the language. Also, they need a lot of advocacy when they go to the Department of Transitional Assistance. I go with them and I advocate for them too. I mean, it's so many needs that the community has, so we are trying to help them out.
We don't just want to offer the services, but we want them to use services and be proficient themselves so they can be better, they can be empowered, they can do things by their own, they can be sustainable. So we don't have to be the ones that provide, they can provide for others as well. We want to be the CMAA-like for the Latinx community. We want to be that part of the city that when they take decisions and there's some decisions taken concerning the Latinx community, then they can advocate to us and then we try to provide the better reasoning for the community.
I have been working for the city of Lowell for the past 20 years. I started in 1999 at Healthy Families, and so I know a lot about the community and I love being able to do this now full time.
The LCCE is primarily grant funded. The best way to reach them is to call Luz. On April 2nd, the city launched its partnership with VEO Ride, a ride-share company that delivered a brand new fleet of colorful 3-speed bicycles. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony in front of City Hall, those in attendance got to try out the bikes.
Look out! Oh, be careful. Oh, God. Look at this.
Local riders can rent the bikes in 15-minute increments using the downloadable VEO Ride app on their smartphones. Here's how it works.
Our system functions first via an app on your smartphone. Now this is, of course, usable on iOS and Android devices. You get the free app in the App Store called VEO Ride, and once you've downloaded it, you create an account with your phone number, You upload a little bit onto your wallet balance, and then you're good to go. Find your location. Our location is the blue dot. The bike symbol comes up next to us, so you know there's one right next to us, really. You click the unlock when you find the bike, and it gives you the camera view. So you can hold that over the QR code. It vibrates, asks you if you're ready to do it. Click yes. The unlock happens. There's some height measurements on the seat post here, and by pulling up the teal lever, then you can adjust the height, and you take off. We're gonna start in Lowell with 180 bikes. We would like to build the fleet up to somewhere around 500 if that market potential is there and if the ridership is there. The riding data and the location of the rides happening is the most important metric that we look upon to make the partnership work in Lowell, because it tells us where people pick up and where people drop off the bikes. Now, this is a dockless system, so people can technically drop the bikes within our geofence wherever they prefer. The tires have great tread to, of course, be usable on all surfaces, road surfaces, but they are ride flat, so they're pretty hard. You're never going to be able to pop them. They're solid, really versatile components on the bike, such as the low standover. I can step right in and get on the bike, no problem. A headlight and a tail light at both ends. The headlight is the most important part because it's powered by the front hub, so it will be on when you move. There are multiple membership options, day, monthly, and annual. And students do receive a discounted rate if you have an EDU email address. And of course, the pay-as-you-go model. When you are ready to end the ride, you have to physically end the lock the lock. And when you're all done, you kick the kickstand down and you set the bike up.
VEO Ride was first rolled out in Chicago and is available in cities around the country. Chop Dinners are a project of the Coalition for a Better Acre and Working Cities Lowell. On the last Wednesday of every month at the Senior Center in the Acre, they welcome everyone to a friendly, free dinner and information given out by local nonprofits. Sean McCarthy is the director of the Working Cities Lowell initiative.
The way I look at Chop Dinner is that it's a space, it's a safe space for people of all different backgrounds, come together, break bread, build relationships within systems. It just breaks down those barriers. The role of Working Cities in the Chop Dinner is to convene partners to come to the table. We do a lot of the outreach in the Acre neighborhood for this. Is that the Working Cities partnership is focusing on the Acre neighborhood, so we do all physical outreach in the Acre neighborhood. We like to have theme nights, and so that's when an organization or multiple organizations can come in and we can have a theme of, let's say, healthcare.
The Lowell Health Alliance works really closely with Lowell Community Health Center and Lowell General Hospital. And what we're doing, we're sort of hosting this evening tonight.
The Chop Dinner is a great place because it really brings in people from all over Lowell. It's the type of environment that it's not presentation style. It's, everybody just comes in and wants to learn, really very down to earth. It's about conversations with people.
We have CTI Youth Build, so Youth Build has a culinary program, and the young adults that are in there cook the food for us tonight, so that's great.
What we're doing here tonight at the Chop Dinner is that we were invited by our peers at Team Block, and they said we should come and check it out. So it'll be a great experience to come and bond with the community and meet new people, so we thought we might check it out. I'm thankful for, just being here today with all of you guys, get to see new faces and, interact with you guys more.
Probably just hear about more stories and how the community's going and, see and communicate with new people.
Got tons of food.
Interact with all people here, talk to them, just see how their day was, just be friendly.
I like everything, but more talking with the people, I like talk with the people and bring people here,
I've lived here all my life, and Lowell's a great city. You have to do things with your city to make your city, people like your city.
And it's very nice because you can get a lot of information about what the city offered to you, the resources, and you can enjoy with some friends. I love this kind of events, yeah.
You don't have to live in the acre to be welcome at the CoOp Dinner. On April 24th, the theme will be higher education. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Lowell Fire Chief Jeff Winward.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun. Thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Sunspot. I'm proud to say that this is the 89th edition of this esteemed show. And with me as a first-time guest, I've had other top public safety officials from the city of Lowell in this studio, but with me is the Lowell Fire Chief, Mr. Winward. Jeff Winward, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's great to be here, and it's an honor to be your 89th guest.
Oh, they all say that. I think whoever was 86 said that on 86, but...
I'll always be number 89, right?
You'll always be 89. But thank you for coming in on short notice.
You're welcome.
We were chatting off air about the fire service and going over some old war stories of fires here in Lowell that you've been involved in, that I covered as a reporter.
Sure.
And we're talking about how the fire service has changed and how the Lowell Fire Department has been forced to adapt to that change. So maybe we could just talk about, the old school firehouse for a minute, and then, where it is now, and then where you see it heading in the future.
Sure. Well, thanks, Chris. But before 1975, people didn't have smoke detectors in their homes, and there were very few sprinkler systems. And the fire and building codes were pretty much non-existent back then. So we had a lot of multiple alarm fires here in the city. There was a lot of arson for profit back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of multi-family buildings were burning, 2, 3, 4 times a week. And people were getting killed, and it was dangerous, and we were fighting fires all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to today, technology's changed quite a bit. We have very good working smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms. We have automatic notification to the fire department in the bigger apartment buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We have sprinkler systems everywhere. We have fire codes. We have building codes that have been improved after different tragedies over the years.
Mm-hmm.
We do inspections of some of the big buildings. So the number of bigger fires has come down quite a bit. We still have a lot of small fires. We're getting to them a lot faster.
Can I just want to ask you a quick question. Sorry for interrupting. Sprinklers, smoke alarms, fire alarms, those are all pretty self-explanatory. Give me an example of how there's been a change in the building code, like on say how a building is constructed that has reduced the frequency of fires. Is there like something to do with the walls or the way the walls are constructed? I'm curious about that.
Well, actually, modern buildings are a little bit more dangerous for us, actually, because people are using lightweight construction now. They're using 1x3s, whereas in the old days they might use 2x10s for beams and columns. Roofs tend to collapse a little bit quicker in a big fire. Today, people are using truss roofs, which are made with 2x4s, where older construction roofs are made with heavy timber, and the roofs last a little bit longer. So we're always concerned about that, but these new smoke alarm systems, the sprinkler systems, multiple exits, things like that we're having less fires, but when we do have a fire, the buildings are still dangerous because they're collapsing a little bit quicker.
Just one last thing on this topic. You were at a fire a few weeks ago, and we did a story on it in the newspaper, and you talked about the building being like subdivided in a gazillion different ways, which made it hard to fight the fire. You must encounter that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the older buildings in the city are cut up, and then when they're full of smoke, it's hard to find your way around. It's hard to find the fire sometimes. Usually there's smoke all over the building, but the fire might be isolated in one area, and it takes some time to find it. In that case, the fire was up in the attic, and there was all sheetrock around it. We couldn't find a door to the attic, so we had to cut a hole in the sheetrock just to get access to the fire. So things like that are a little bit more difficult than a big open building.
Right. We've done stories at The Sun, too, about the buildings that you see that are marked with an X, a white X against a red background. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that's a signal to firefighters that if there's a firefighter, not to enter the building. Is that correct?
Correct. We have two different symbols. We have a slash, which is half an X, or we have an X.
Okay.
If there's a slash on the building, it tells us that it's dangerous. You can go in, but proceed with caution if there's a fire. But if a building has an X on it, we generally don't go in it. The floors might be missing, the stairs might be missing, and when the building's full of smoke, we can't see it, so it can become very dangerous.
And that could hurt a firefighter.
Sure.
The number of buildings that have the X, are there more buildings now that have the X than, say, 5 years ago, or fewer?
Definitely fewer. I think the value of real estate around here has gone up so much. People are buying older buildings, rehabbing them, and putting people in them. And you know, if you go back to the 70s, we had some abandoned mill buildings in the city, and we had huge mill fires. Today,
We were
most-
talking about one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, most of the mills have been rehabbed. They have people in them. They have good sprinkler and smoke alarm systems. It's a lot safer. We're not getting the multiple alarm fires as much.
We were talking again off air about where the fire department is today. And what was the phrase you used as opposed to, you'll always be the Lowell Fire Department, but
Right.
the hazard department? Did
Yeah,
you say?
we've evolved into an all hazards department.
All hazards department.
So we're responding to medical emergencies, and namely the opiate overdose calls. Everyone knows and has heard in the media that the opiate crisis is probably our #1 problem these days. And the firefighters are going out and performing rescue breathing and administering Narcan. Some of our firefighters are members of the CoOp Team, and they're going out and following up on overdose victims and steering them into treatment programs. We're responding to...
I'd like to come back to the co-op team. Hopefully we'll have a minute.
Yeah, they're doing great work.
Yep.
We're responding to hazardous materials incidents. We're getting fentanyl calls, different types of chemical spills. We're responding to car accidents in the city. We had a bad one on Andover Street the other night with a rollover.
Yes.
We're responding to water rescues. We're just responding to a lot of different types of calls. And we also have other divisions like fire prevention, where they're doing smoke detector inspections. They're inspecting schools and hospitals and nursing homes. We have a public education officer that's trying to educate young and old people about fire safety and about the hazards of illegal drugs. So we've kind of evolved into an all hazards department. I also happen to be the emergency management director for the city.
Yeah.
So
Well, that makes sense that's you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we work together with the other departments in the city: police, building department, street department, water department, school department, city manager's office. And we all work together, and we come up with plans for major emergencies in the city for either planned or non-planned events. And you know, we do a lot of different things today rather than fight the fires.
Right.
But when we do have the bigger fires, we're prepared for that as well.
Now, in Lowell, when there's a medical call for an ambulance, there's always a fire truck that goes to,
Sure.
correct? And so the fire truck will go, and there'll be a Trinity ambulance that responds as well, too, right? Just sticking with the opiate crisis for a minute, you've been great in this regard, and that's one reason that you're going to get that award this week from the Lowell House, along with Jody White from Lowell General Hospital and John Chemerly, correct?
Sure.
From Trinity Ambulance. You know how you've responded. You've issued press releases, warnings, saying that hey, we've seen a spike in opiate-related deaths or overdoses.
Right. Trinity has this app that they've given us called First Watch, and it allows us to keep track of the overdoses over the past 3 days. And if we see a spike in the number of overdoses or the number of fatal overdoses, I get together with the police chief, with some folks over at Trinity, with Lowell General, and we look at the numbers. And if we see a big spike, the city council made a motion to put out a press release to the media.
Oh, that came from the council. Okay.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. To warn folks that, you know, if your loved one is using opiates, be extra vigilant over the next couple of days, because we feel there's an extra strong batch of a heroin fentanyl mixture out there. And you know, make sure your loved one's not using alone. Make sure you call 911 if you do suspect someone's using an overdose. And please try to have Narcan available if you feel that your loved one might be subject to an overdose.
When's the most recent time you had to issue that press release? I want to guess maybe 4 months ago, 5 months
I think
ago?
it was about 4 or 5 months ago. We had to do 2 of them in kind of a short period. But this calendar year, we've seen a dip in the numbers a little bit, which is very good news for us.
What numbers specifically?
And the total number of overdoses has gone down a little bit this calendar year. Unfortunately, the fatals have been about the same as the last couple of years. And the numbers are all too high, but we have seen a little bit of a dip this year, which is encouraging news.
So we're 3 months into 2019. How many fatal overdoses have there been in Lowell so far this year? Can you?
It's difficult to say exactly. The last number I heard was 19.
Okay.
Which is about on pace with the last couple of years.
Okay. But wasn't there a glimmer of hope toward the end of last year? Because I know one of our reporters, Rick Sobey, covered one of Marion Ryan's opiate meetings on Lowell General Hospital
Sure.
that they have on Fridays, and I know you attend those too, where help me understand this, where the number of deaths are down, but the number of overdoses are actually up. Do I have that right?
That was correct last year, but the numbers do fluctuate a little bit. This year we're seeing a little bit of a different trend, where right now the deaths are about the same, but the total number of overdoses are down a little bit. And then when the warm months get here, July is usually our busiest month, so we tend to see an uptick during the warmer months. But we feel with all that we're doing in the city, with the CoOp team, with the Mayor's Opiate Task Force, the DA's Opiate Task Force, all the work that the firefighters, the police, Trinity, Lowell General Paramedics are doing, the Lowell House, all the different nonprofits, Lowell Community Health. Everyone's coming together and doing a lot of good work.
Let's get
That's
to the
making a difference.
Let's get to the co-op team in just 1 second. You've been in the fire service for how long now?
25 years.
25 years. Did you ever think that when you became a firefighter, or when you became chief, that the opioid crisis would be such a prominent piece of what you're trying to attend to?
No, I had no idea. When I joined the service, there were very few overdoses. It was, we were going to fires and car accidents and water rescues, but no, we weren't going to very many overdoses. And it seems like about 2010 they started to pick up a little bit, and then about three or 4 years ago it really started to pick up on the fentanyl came into the area.
The overdoses. I know you can't identify, the folks involved, but they run the gamut, right? I mean, I think a lot of people are under the wrong impression that it's some homeless guy sitting in an alley or sitting in a park, but it's not, is it?
Sure, the opiates don't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, any age, any either sex, any community. Everyone has a story, and everyone starts off as having a productive life, and then when they get hooked on the pills and they switch to the heroin and the fentanyl, their life just kind of goes downhill. We do a lot to try to help them out, and the co-op team, as you mentioned, does a lot of great work.
Let's talk about the co-op team.
Sure.
So
It was an idea of former Chief Bill Taylor, and it was a great idea. And we started off with a police officer, a firefighter, and a social worker from the Lowell House. And we've expanded it now. We've had people from Trinity Ambulance join the team, the health department. UMass Lowell's helped us out. We have a supervisor. We've expanded the team quite a bit, and they have an office over on Summer Street.
it sounds like there's a story there.
Yeah. They do great work. They go out and they follow up on all the overdoses. They try to
Tell us what that means when, the police officer, the firefighter, someone from Trinity, a social worker.
Sure.
When you say, what is the co-op team's objective? Because I think it's pretty fascinating.
Well, their objective is to try to get people into the right program, to get them the help that they need. And
my goodness, we only have 2 minutes left. Go ahead. Yep.
But people lose hope when they're hooked on opiates, and the co-op team gives people hope. It shows them that there's someone that cares about them, and they try to steer them into either a detox or a treatment program at one of the nonprofits.
So if the LFD responds to an overdose, whether it's in a private home or in a public park,
sure,
hopefully it's not fatal, and then the co-op team springs into action, correct?
Sure.
And it tries to meet with that person and engage with that person so that doesn't happen again. Do I have that right?
Exactly, and they'll also talk to family members, and if there's any children involved, they'll try to get the children's services. But they'll talk to the family and the person and try to convince them to get into a program. And if not today, maybe tomorrow. Maybe they'll be ready for it tomorrow.
If you had to guess or speculate how many folks that the co-op team has saved, maybe that's a very broad question, but.
Sure, it's a difficult thing to say because people are never cured from being addicted to opiates. It's a lifelong thing, so it's important that they follow up with people over time. But I would say it's probably been over 100 people that they've saved, and they've touched a lot more people than that.
Right. What does it mean to you to be receiving the award from the Lowell House and wrapping up for some recognition for your work in this regard?
Oh, it's a great honor. Bill Gard does a great job over at the Lowell House, and John Chumley and Jody White are great people, and it's an honor to be on the same stage as them. It's very humbling, but it's a big team effort. It's the men and women out in the streets every day that are doing the work.
Chumley's used to the stage.
But his folks do a great job over
That's
there.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Sunspot. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another guest. Have a good night, everyone.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, or on Facebook at LTC Lowell. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for a great 2-year experience, and thanks for watching.